welcome to Hope Matters. This is Mount Olive Lutheran Church's in Santa Monica's program, a television program talking about hope. What brings hope into people's lives? And I'm Pastor Shafer, the senior pastor at Mount Olive, and each week I bring a guest and we talk a few minutes about hope. And today I'm so pleased to have my friend here, Rabbi Neil Comess-Daniels, who recently retired as Rabbi of Beth Shir Shalom Synagogue here in Santa Monica. And good news for us Lutherans, Rabbi Neil has joined our staff part-time here at Mount Olive to be our rabbi in residence. And he can tell you a little more about that in a moment. But welcome, Neil. We're so glad you're with us today.
It's so nice to be with you. It's always nice to be with you.
So tell us a little bit about, you just finished one career and now you're starting a different career. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I discovered pretty quickly that rabbis don't quite retire. We become emeritus after many years of service. I was fortunate enough to spend 29 years at Beth Shir Shalom here in Santa Monica, and now am working my passions, part of which is interfaith work. So I'll be working with you and your wonderful congregation. And in addition, I am a clergy in residence for an organization called CLU, which stands for Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice, founded by some mentors of mine. And in addition, I'll be visiting some senior homes and some preschools that need a little bit of kindness and a little bit of love and some music, which I can bring too.
Wonderful. Yes, you've actually been writing music since what, you were in your teens?
Yeah, since I was in my teens.
Yeah.
It's been a long time. Yeah.
Yes.
Writing and playing.
That's great. That's wonderful. The work here at Mount Olive is going to involve preaching and teaching. Since we are on YouTube and your class will be on YouTube, why don't you tell folks about the class you're going to be offering it live and also on YouTube?
Right. We're going to be offering a class on holidays and holy days, an introduction to Judaism for non-Jews, so that people can take away some of the mythology and peek through the curtains and see what Judaism is really about, what it's really doing in the world now. And not only that, but how it has evolved over time. What I usually do when I teach a class like this is I create a spectrum, a horizon that we can look at, and I will give people perspectives from the Orthodox through the more progressive, through the Reform movement, et cetera, so that they can see the breadth of the horizon that Judaism creates.
Wonderful. I'm not sure I've ever told you about how I got awakened to interfaith relations. I think that's the word. I grew up in one of those lily white, almost all Christian suburbs, and college, of course, at Muhlenberg College in Allentown, a third of the student body was Jewish, so that was a great experience to have a different experience. But it really hit home when I had my first congregation north of Allentown, Pennsylvania, in a town called Catasauqua. And my wife, Chris, was working at a hospital, and she became friends with the Means, who are still our friends, and they invited us to a party at their home. And I got introduced to a well-known doctor in Lehigh Valley who happened to be Jewish, and we started to talk. And all of a sudden, a light bulb went up in my head, and I said, I have more in common with this guy than I do with the people that don't attend my church that claim to be members. And it was, it's so simple, but so true.
Yeah.
And for our viewers, that's really the bottom line for what Neil and I hope to do, is that we are so much more alike than we are different.
Right.
And when we realize that, we can do so much more together than we can do separately. And that's not brain surgery for sure. But I think people that get in their cocoons, and there certainly are Christian cocoons, there certainly are Lutheran cocoons in certain parts of the country. I assume there are Jewish, cocoons in the New York area, for example, where there are more Jewish people.
And not only there.
But when we break away from that, we say, wait a minute, there's not that much difference, we have to remind Christians that Jesus was a Jew his entire life on earth. I mean, all his disciples were Jews. I mean, and so, I mean,
Right.
that our religions especially ought to have a bond stronger than any other bond.
Right. Uh, I realized the power of interfaith work when I was on a street corner, at the corner of Wilshire and Santa Monica in Beverly Hills, protesting the nuclear arms race. And I was there with some Catholic sisters that I knew and some Quakers and so on and so forth, and we all gathered there. And I just had this epiphanal moment when I recognized that we all came there through different paths, but we all ended up at the same place.
Yeah.
And that was so significant and powerful for me.
For me too, I got active when I was working on the bishop's staff in Pennsylvania and then the national bishop's staff in an organization called the Religious Public Relations Council, now called the Religion Communicators Council, the Guild of Professional Communicators of Religion, which is broadly interfaith. And one of my best friends now from that time is Anuta Madasa, who's head of communication for Hare Krishna International. And of course, he didn't hesitate to remind me that Hare Krishna is the one God religion of Hinduism, and that has a concept of sin, which other branches of Hinduism do not have. And so therefore it's the closest of the Hindu faiths to our faiths. And then just one more story. I was visiting out here for the RCC organization, and they pulled together some local people, and here I am, this white Christian guy, and everyone else at the meeting were women, and there was a Black Baptist, a Scientologist, a Mormon, and a Buddhist. And I thought, I'm not in Allentown anymore, I'll tell you.
No. Well, I think that's one of the blessings of being where we are, that I often tell people who are new to the area, start at the ocean on any major street that goes east and just watch the city change.
Yeah.
And watch, what an incredible conglomeration of cultures and peoples we are.
It really is the case. I mean, yes, Roman Catholics are huge numbers here, of course, but right below that, there are large numbers of Jews and Lutherans, for example. I mean, and everything else in between, as we know. And then, as you know, in the interfaith organization here in Santa Monica, I keep meeting people from religions I don't know much about. Not self-help religions. That sounds like I'm demeaning them, but different sorts of, and even calling them New Age. I don't think I'd call them that, but different. Not exactly sure if they don't really stand under a brand, do they? At that point, but they're very interesting.
They are very interesting, and I think what it's part of the way in which just like human beings are porous and we share energy. I mean, what we're experiencing now with this pandemic is that our literally our chemical and electrical energy isn't exchanging with one another, and that's we're really all impoverished by that. We're all really missing something in our lives through that. But when we transfer that to entities like spirituality, and we see the porousness of the way in which we can exchange with each other. And I think a lot of those quote unquote New Age religions they don't want to have firm boundaries. They want to be completely porous.
Yeah. Well, interfaith work has really adjusted my view of a lot of things. I can't imagine a heaven for me that, for example, that you wouldn't be in. So, the idea that heaven is exclusive of name the faith, that I don't know if I ever felt that way, but I sure after interfaith experiences could not feel that way ever again. And you know, that puts me probably on the left wing of Christianity, and I'll wave that flag proudly if if that puts me there. So
Well, I think it's the right place to be. I think it is definitely the place that Jesus was.
yeah,
Definitely to the left, definitely a radical, definitely someone who wanted to um, bring uh, a actually bring people back to the true values of what spirituality should be. In addition to that, I mean, I think that uh, being out there, um, I think left, right, and center is all relative. I mean, it's just, and we all need to recognize that in the little cocoons that you described before of our religions, that one of the things that happens is that we say things to ourselves that all of a sudden, if we bring in a guest from somewhere else, all of a sudden don't quite ring true
right,
anymore. I mean,
yeah,
I had that experience. We did a Muslim Jewish partnering one Sabbath evening, and it was a wonderful muazzin, the gentleman who does the call to worship, and this particular guy was incredible, just incredible. His voice was magnificent, and um, he did his call to worship. We did ours. We exchanged some things during the service. We finally got toward the end of the service, where there is and kind of an infamous prayer within Judaism called the Aleinu, which thanks God, that we have the responsibility of praising God, and thank God we're Jewish and other people are them. And I was standing right next to them, and I said, I can't say this prayer this way anymore, so I changed it.
yeah. I
Um,
think that we don't. It really helps us lift out of our context and realize the prejudices we bring.
mhm.
I mean, um, we're not here to talk about racism today, but the comparisons there are very easy. That as white people, we bring to these relationships some assumptions that need to be tested. I think that's fair to say.
Right, and
Let's
as soon as
let's
we,
get to our hope topic.
okay,
All right,
hope.
here we, because you and I could talk about a lot of things a lot of times, and maybe we'll have a chance to do that again. Neil, these are strange times. I think that's a fair thing to say. I mean, the pandemic, um, the the grossness of some police, conduct toward African American men, especially the national demonstrations that have arisen for good following, and the changes for good that have already started to happen after
Mhm.
George Floyd's death. Um, and then you and I could add a dozen more to that list: environmental degradation, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, one of the common things that I'm asking people about is it's pretty easy to be hopeless right now. You know, talk to parents of young children that just found out that LAUSD schools and Santa Monica schools are going to be closed this fall.
Yeah.
So, what brings you hope in your life generally, and especially at this time?
Well, I can't help but start with this time because it's so sometimes overwhelming in its simplicity of what it's asking us to do, which is to stay home, stay safe, stay sheltered if we can, and stay away from other people. That again. I think that there's a wonderful film called I Am, that was produced by, his last name is Shadyac. I can't remember his first name. I think it's Tom, if I'm not mistaken. He's a movie producer. He worked, did a lot of funny movies and all this kind of thing. A wonderful cyclist, and had a very bad accident on his bike, and uh, was in great pain afterwards, to the point that he he contemplated taking his own life. And then suddenly the pain went away, and he went around the world, and it is Tom Shadyac, I think, that he asked people, what's wrong with the world and what can we do to fix it? And the first person he interviewed was his dad, a devout Catholic. He said, I'll tell you what the problem with the world is. He says, I go to church every Sunday, and there are all these people in there, all kinds of colors, all kinds of ethnicities, all kinds of cultures. He said, and the problem is then we leave and we don't see each other again until the next week. And it's only within that context that we see each other. Then somehow he ended up in this laboratory where they were talking about what I was talking about just a few minutes ago, about how things exchange in the world. He was hooked up with electrodes, and they put him in a room with a bowl of yogurt. I swear this is true. And they put electrodes in the yogurt. And after about 10 minutes, kind of his personality, his electrical personality changed, as did the yogurt when they were in each other's presence. And I think that's what we need to do now. We need to be very present, because hope is seductive. Hope drags us toward a future that is impossible to envision at this point. We really just don't know what's going to happen. Even tomorrow, that all of a sudden things could change either for the better or for the worse. We just don't know. And we also need to be hard and fast in our understanding of what this virus is, that it's only a part of the world acting as every other living creature in this world as we know it does. It strives to survive. And our job is to strive to survive despite this coronavirus, do the best that we can, because we have a brain and we're intelligent and we can figure out how to do this, a great gift that we have, and we can use it to be powerful and strong and accomplished and in control in the moment, so that we understand our hope and we don't let it go too far.
That's great. That's great. Good. Thank you. That's wonderful. I've been asking people this question too. For you personally, what helps you get up in the morning? It's a new day. You're retired now. You could stay in bed. So,
I did a little bit this morning.
What gets you out of bed?
Well, I mean, very practically, what gets me out of bed in the morning is the dog,
of course,
and his needs. So I'm immediately grounded in that reality. But when we walk, I take that time to pray, and getting to that prayer and contemplation gives me, it orients me. A long time ago, I stopped praying to anything or anyone, but trying to pray with everything and everyone. And that's my overture, my opening volley in the world is that walk in the morning. That gets me up.
Wonderful. Anything else we should talk about in terms of hope today, do you think?
Well, I think, I would certainly like to reinforce the message that that science isn't antithetical to spirituality, and that scientists are some of the most spiritual people I know, because they're always wondering, because they're always wanting to know more and discover how this world works. And in everything that they do, they are praying with instead of praying to. They are trying to climb inside the reality of this world, and help us understand it better so that we can live better within it. I mean, that goes to the realities of climate change and the way in which we need to respond. I mean, those realities give me hope. Not the fanciful wishes of, you know, you know, there's a wonderful teacher in Judaism, who was both a scientist and a philosopher, and a great rabbi, Maimonides. And Maimonides essentially said, there are no miracles. There's just what you perceive to be a miracle. So if, I don't know any OBGYN, even though they do, they may get, kind of inured and do one birth after another and so on and so forth, but you can't take away it. And they may not see that as miraculous, but that mother and that father see that baby as miraculous.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that's what we need to hold on to now, are those realities in our lives, and walk with the people who are trying to guide us into good places.
That's great. That's great. Well, as you know, there's two new banners up around Mount Olive. One says Black Lives Matter, and another says we believe in God and trust science. And
I love that.
And that's very true. And we can go on here, but when I interviewed Cheryl Anderson in our first interview, who's in Hollywood, and she said people ask her all the time, how can you be a Christian in Hollywood? And she said, how can I not be? And of course, my experience here, which I already knew from being involved in communication work, was, there are a lot of people of faith in Hollywood, and people don't realize that. There are a lot of scientists that are deep believers in God, and they're working, and they're certainly doing God's work. All those areas that some people tend to say are heathen, I've never found it that way. Just haven't.
There's a wonderful show on NPR called Radio Lab, and they were interviewing a scientist from Arizona, if I'm not mistaken, at the University of Arizona, who had created a creation lab to try and recreate the creation to see if they could understand it more, okay, as best they could. And he said, now I'm a scientist, and I'm going to use words now that are going to make me sound religious. He said, and I'm not. He said, but I think there's a purpose to all of this.
Yeah.
And the purpose of all of what we're in is to create a being that can turn around and look at this and say, what is this? And what's my place in it? What's my role? And that's us.
That's us. Yeah.
And, like Spider-Man says, that creates huge responsibility for us. Not only opportunity, but huge responsibility. And if we take this critical moment, this moment of crisis and urgency, to focus in on our ability to rise up to our responsibilities, that will give us hope.
We have wonderful opportunities in the midst of all these crises to do some good. And there we have it. I mean, I think that's what we're about as professionals of religion. We have an excuse, not that we needed it, but we I think we're about doing good. And I say that to the staff all the time, especially after some difficult days. We did some good today, and that makes me, and I think it is important for people of faith to stop every so often and say to themselves, we did some good. I did some good today. I tried to act as my faith says I should, and I may not always succeed in that, but I did some good today.
I like that very much.
Well, thank you for joining us today. This is Hope Matters, and our guest today was Rabbi Neil Comess-Daniels, recently retired rabbi from Beth Shir Shalom here in Santa Monica, and fortunately for Mount Olive, one of his many retirement part-time positions is going to be the rabbi in residence on the staff here at Mount Olive Lutheran Church in Santa Monica. This is Hope Matters. We're talking to interesting people every week about hope in their lives because we believe we have a God of hope. Thank you for joining us today. Hope Matters.